When did someone challenge you at something you were an expert at? Story 1, kind of the reverse. For me, I'm a physical education teacher and I had a student that took a pretty bad tumble in class. Hit her head on the wall, pretty clear concussion symptoms, so we get her stable, call mom dad to come get her. Dad shows up, I start going through the concussion symptoms and treatments with him. Letting him know that a doctor's visit is probably in order. Blah blah blah, I keep going on and on about concussions. He just politely nods and thanks me, he takes daughter and leaves, and I see my principal standing behind me and he can barely contain his laughter. Turns out dad is an emergency room doctor. And he just sat there while his daughter's gym teacher gave him medical advice. Story 2, Medieval Fair, 2002. Carney running the fencing game picks me out of the crowd for being tall, and challenges me to a free bout against the master. Not a lot of people fence, so his gambit probably worked most of the time, but when he handed me that saber, I handed him his. Story 3, it happens a lot lately. I'm a microbiologist, so the number of people who have suddenly taken an interest in the subject in order to be confidently wrong about it is pretty upsetting. Story 4, while I was in high school I was the reigning city fencing champion. In both the youth and adult tournaments, my high school decided to do a school-wide fencing unit for phys, ed, and the coach they brought in to teach all of the students was my actual coach. During my classes, my coach naturally brought me up to help demonstrate the various moves, but for some reason one of my classmates didn't understand that I wasn't chosen at random. He started talking about how I looked like I didn't know what I was doing, and how he could probably kick me in a duel. Now, he actually was pretty good for a guy who had never fenced before, and at the first opportunity to actually have a bout, he decided to have a go at me. I picked him apart and did not give up a single touch, and used the opportunity to practice my parry and ripostes. I admit, I took a bit of sadistic pleasure in thoroughly beating him. Afterwards, my coach made a point of congratulating the other guy for doing so well against the city champ, which changed his attitude considerably. Story 5, I have been wrapping my family's Christmas presents since a very young age. It's the perfect activity to focus my crippling perfectionism with my overall anxiety-riddled self to create a beautiful masterpiece that would make anyone think twice about discovering the mysteries beneath the colorful paper and bows. I have just always loved to do it, and my mom was more than happy to not spend hours wrapping presents. Flash forward to the company Christmas party in my late 20s. We are split into teams to compete for random prizes. I am up for the next game. I had no idea what I would be doing. I see a big cardboard box, a necktie, wrapping paper, scissors, tape and a bow. I know it's about to go down and I am here for it. It's a blind present wrapping challenge. My competitors start talking about how they can wrap presents fast, and I sit there silently staring down that cardboard box knowing fully that the crowd is in for a show. Blindfolds, neckties go on. We have a partner that isn't blindfolded that is supposed to give verbal directions. Just before the timer starts, I lean over to my partner and say quietly, "Are you ready for this?" And she just say what? Bam, timer starts. Partner tries to give directions at first and quickly realizes I'm way ahead of her. Before anyone else can even get their paper cut, I've got my box wrapped, taped and bowed. I even folded the ends in fancy to have the triangles meet. And that, my friends, is how I earned the most satisfying 10 Starbucks gift card of my life and earned the title of Wrap Master. Story 6, color. It sounds weird, but anytime the color of something comes up and someone tries to correct me, I've been a commercial printing press operator for 20 years, I can spot very subtle differences in colors that most people can't. Edit, the upvote is orange. The dress is blue and black. Story 7, by no means an expert, ID probably rate in the 1500s, but I've played chess since I was a small child and was the best player in the middle school chess club. The guy who owned the pool hall me and my juvenile delinquent friends hung out in was talking about how dumb kids are these days and said he bet nobody in my group of hoodlums could play chess. I beat him soundly, then again in the rematch. Story 8, my father-in-law challenged me about the capabilities of DVD. Specifically, he claimed that you could only have widescreen video, not 43 on a DVD disc. At the time I was employed as a DVD author, I authored the very first commercially available feature on Scenarist. I am literally acknowledged in the first edition of DVD Demystified as an expert. I had already by that time personally authored literally hundreds of DVDs with 43 video. He knew all of the above at the time, yet still insisted I was wrong. Story 9, the property management company for my homeowners association insisted that I had received emails that I never received, so I asked them to prove that I had received them. They said they're sure I received them. I'm a software engineer, and at the time I had just finished an enterprise email delivery system like an in-house Constant Contact. I knew the rules of the CAN-SPAM Act by heart. I knew exactly how their system worked, so this reel of a property manager said I know how email works. You wouldn't understand. I mentally did the arrogant knuckle crack and started to explain, very methodically, how email delivery works and how they track various actions. I spent about 5 minutes detailing my credentials and why I was absolutely certain they had never sent me the emails they alleged I received. When I was finished, the HMWA board just agreed to waive the fines. Story 10, my father trying to explain to me how computers and the internet work, after he's called me over to figure out why his computer and internet aren't working. Edit, spoiler, it was because my mom downgraded their TV package, and they must have accidentally turned off the audio Wi-Fi. Since the video Wi-Fi was still working fine. Edit, my dad's understanding of electronics stopped evolving in the 1990s. He knows that plugging the DVD player in involves a 3-pronged cable. 2 for audio, 1 for video. In guessing he thinks the internet works the same way. So being able to see YouTube but not hear it means that the audio stream is out, because the cable company and also Trump somehow, and it is certainly not the fault of his ridiculously complicated home stereo setup that requires 4 remotes to operate. Story 11. I used to play fighting games competitively all over the world. Never made one of the top slots, but I could usually hold my own. One of my best game was Super Street Fighter 2. Went to a bar by work one day and they just so happened to have an SNES set up with SF2. I order a drink, pick random characters and just around for a bit. Some guy comes in and immediately starts bragging to his date that he's the best SF2 player ever. I asked him to play some games against me and offered to buy him a drink if he could beat 2 out of 3. 12 games later I am completed hammered and he finally gives up and leaves. Still don't remember getting home that night. Story 12. A beginning writer asked some advice about a basic drafting method. So I offered my point of view. Some tough guy decided to butt in and say that what I said was proof I'm not a real writer, and it was obvious I would never be published. At that time, the second or third book in my trilogy was about to be released. I asked the guy not to tell my editor that I wasn't a real writer. Story 13. Not quite this, but I tried to learn piano years ago. I bought a keyboard and learned the first movement of Moonlight Sonata, but it was literally all I could play. I had just started a new job as a chef in a fancy hotel, had been there maybe a month and was at the Christmas party. I sat at a piano and the head chef pointed me out, laughing and said, "Look at Splifflizard, you can't play the piano." I thought I'll just act confident and play the only thing I can, so was like, yeah I can. I've played for years, and he said, "Oh really? Play Moonlight Sonata then." Couldn't have gone better. He was gobsmacked and I never told anyone there that I was actually at piano except that one song L. Story 14. I'm no expert, but people never assume I can play pool. I grew up with my parents going to the pub, so as an early teen would play a lot of pool and got pretty good. There's been a number of occasions where I've got us a round of drinks or stuck it to some who's hogging the table. Story 15. My roommate who took a Psych 101 class at a prestigious university told me, a master's level therapist, that the movie Split with James McAvoy was an accurate depiction of multi-personality disorder. Story 16. Not me, but my friend used to ride a unicycle as a kid. He worked construction and they were working at a house that had an old unicycle. The other workers tried riding it and immediately fell off. My friend walked over to it and inspected the unicycle like it was the first time he ever saw one. Them said it didn't look that difficult. They all laughed at him and he said he thought he could ride it. Eventually one of them bet him 100 he couldn't ride it. He jumped on it and immediately rode down the street. Story 17. I wouldn't say I'm an expert at push-ups, but I've worked in the fitness industry for 20 years and work out myself fairly regularly. Doing 20 push-ups isn't anything to me. I was at a party that was attended primarily by what I would call hipsters. A guy who had been drinking a fair amount challenged me to 20 push-ups as fast as possible for 20. I won and got 20. Then another said he would do the same bet if we went right away, I guess thinking I was kinda tired. I beat him and got another 20. A few minutes later another guy did the same bet. It was an easy 60. Story 18. For most of 2020 so far, I am an infectious disease expert PhD from a microbiology and immunology program, and suddenly all my former high school classmates think they know more than me. They watch the news and learn a new vocabulary, and they bestow themselves a doctorate. Story 19. Went to a couple's night once and the guy had wall-to-wall movies and framed posters in his basement. Super into it. Mentioned I used to be a movie nerd but not so much anymore. He challenged us to a movie trivia board game, kinda in a condescending way, and I tried to politely decline but my GF insisted we play. They went first, missed the question, then we ran the table. Never heard from them again. Story 20. Someone once tried to insist that our state didn't sell alcohol on Sundays. I've spent over a decade working in restaurants and am also an alcoholic, which she knew about but still insisted on arguing with me about it. Story 21. Not an expert, or even certified, but there's a specific kind of cargo parachute called a small airdrop training bundle. I can pack these correctly and buy the book in less than 15 minutes. I was challenged by someone who had 5 years experience on me to see who could pack the most in an hour. I had 6 while he was trying to argue with a quality control guy who has been packing parachutes for 20 years over how correct he did step 3. I had a good day beating the guy who just so happened to be the worst rigger in the world. Story 22. I'm going to date myself here, but I was in undergrad when the video game Halo was released. I never really played video games, but at the time I had a boyfriend. I am a girl who was really into it. We played a lot, even went to some college-based tournament games and did well. Fast forward some years later and my husband and I are at a house party. Someone turns on the Xbox and was looking for a fourth for Halo. My husband volunteers me. The guys were visibly not thrilled but played along. I wiped the floor with them. Eventually they decided to team up 3 against me. Still destroyed them. The whole party ended up crowding around us to watch. It was a great night. Story 23. When we were having a couple drinks on Friday after work, I was challenged to a shooting by a colleague. Little did he know I've been shooting air rifles competitively ever since I was 13. Not to say I am the greatest, but I've made it to the national finals for my country multiple times, and came 3rd and 6th. I have all the special clothes and gear and such you need to make it to such a level. The next day, Saturday, we showed up to the range I always shoot at. It's not a day I usually train, so not many people recognize me. I beat his left, right, and center that day. Out of 600 points, he scored about 200 to 250 if I remember correctly. I got about 580, which was about average of what I used to shoot. He had to buy me a fancy bottle of whiskey and now we shoot every 2 or 3 weeks together. Fun times. I'm sorry if it's hard to follow. English is my second language. Story 24. This happens to me a lot. I had the unique situation of working in manufacturing in China for 7 years. I moved back 3 years ago and constantly have people explain to me why manufacturing could easily come back to the States. I emphatically tell them they are high. Story 25. I have perfect pitch. It's not a thing I can turn off. Notes simply are a pitch clear as day, much like how red is clearly distinct from green. Anywho, music class in junior high. Teacher explains that Mozart had perfect pitch and walks over to the piano, plays a note and says, and just by hearing it, he'd be able to tell you what now that was. Now can any of you do that? At the time, I honestly had no idea this was rare. Raise hand. Teacher with a smug look points at me and is gobsmacked when I answer correctly with note and octave. Figures it's pure luck, so does it again and asks me to face the other way. I answer correctly again. Tries it with chords, sequences and 2 hands worth of notes. Still right every time. Ends with me playing back a short sequence after listening to it blind. That day, I learned that perfect pitch is actually kind of rare. Story 26. Lemmy C. Krull, the arcade video game. A guy tried to hit on me at a house party by challenging me to a game, but he knew he had made a mistake when I said, sure, I haven't played in a while. It was my boyfriend's house, and his game. We still had fun playing though. Story 27. Oh yes, I get to share the story. Me and my buddies in 7th grade loved GoldenEye. We had sleepovers where we spent every waking second from 5 p.m. until 9 a.m. the next day playing. No sleep at all. We were convinced we were the best, but had no real proof because we were only playing against people in our school. Big fish, small pong type scenario. Fast forward about 6 or 7 years. My college holds a GoldenEye tournament. Haven't played it in years, obviously. Well, there was a giant problem, my friends, and I always played with inverted pitch on. The issue was that GoldenEye in multiplayer doesn't let you select different control styles for different players. Everyone has to play with the same control scheme, so I was stuck with my controls being upside down. I still won the tournament. I got absolutely rocked in the Mario Kart tourney, but I had my GoldenEye badge, edit and being told that I'm a big dummy and you can individually set the controls. So for some reason I wasn't able to in the tournament, but I remember the timed mines round was absolutely bonkers as a result. Also, I'm not changing my spelling mistake regarding a body of water. Story 28. Anytime someone wants to play me at Smash Brothers, I'm nowhere near good enough to go toe-to-toe at major tournaments, but I can hold my own at local tournaments and usually end up in the top 5 out of 20 to 30 players. Which when I go to a party or hang out at a friend's house and they get cocky about their skills usually ends in them getting angry by the end of the night and never wanting to play Smash with me again. Story 29. I wouldn't say an expert, but cycling. My younger brother has a personal vendetta against me. Tried to tell him riding 100 miles not easy. He said, man, I can do 100 miles. I was like, okay, I stay with you the first 50 miles. He didn't make it past 10. Edit, he literally pissed me off calling cycling. I mean, he literally said that easy. Story 30. A foreigner acquaintance was talking to me in my native language, and I corrected him. It was a very simple word, but he was like, oh, are you sure? And kept insisting, yes is a very simple word. I'm sure and is not like you're taking a degree in said language. Kinda pissed me off. Story 31. A former coworker challenged me to a cheese eating competition at an office get-together. Little did he know I love cheese and am the type of person to eat shredded cheese straight out the bag at 3 a.m. He wimped out after 15 cubes of cheese from the deli platter while I basically cleared my whole section. Story 32. Not an expert, but after having to deal with a chemistry teacher in middle school who basically hated me for no reason, I had to put extra effort in the class, so I was really good in that class. So this one time in high school a mean girl hid my test. I got called to the principal's office to inform me they couldn't find my answer sheet even though lists showed I attended class that day. Anyway, I went to the TI office, searched my answer sheet through all the groups. I'm talking a class of 500 people. Since my exam wasn't found, the person in charge of the department started bitching at me that I did it on purpose because probably I knew I was failing, and I told her, well, give another test, I'll do it, and she thought that was big red flag because probably I just memorized all the answers blah blah. I told her just give a bunch of exercises, and I'll solve it right here right now. I bet my entire grade on this. Do you really think I plan to spend all the week looking for that test? So she goes and gives me 10 exercises. I scored 1010, in your face. Safe to say I don't know about chemistry anymore. PSA, I found out what happened to my test because the girl was bragging about taking my test and throwing it to the garbage. Later that year, trivia, I know an amazing amount of BS. Story 33. Teacher thought I was asleep in class, but I'm a great listener when I close my eyes. Asked me to wake up and repeat what he just said. I said verbatim what he was teaching and he just bent his ruler stick and carried on, as did I with my head down. Story 34. Excel. I built a complicated but highly effective Excel workbook to calculate the how to price parts for a top customer of ours. I labeled it, added a legend and color-coded things for users. The user just needed to input the part type, material and target price. It would auto-calculate everything you needed to submit a quote. The sales manager from another factory hated it and refused to use it. He said it pointless and a waste of company time. We got into a lengthy argument over it. He ended up proceeding without using it and ended up submitting conflicting prices to the customer. The customer noticed we were adding additional profit to certain parts and we lost a lot of business. I sent him a screenshot of what he should have used with my pointless document and asked if he'd like me to teach him how to use it. I managed to salvage the relationship with the customer, but then left the company not long after for a better position. Story 35. I have a PhD in genetics, and I've published multiple papers on viral vectors spreading in large populations. Every anti-vaxxer and COVID conspiracy theorist. I'm so sick of it. Also, when someone I met at a social event found out that I work in a genetics research lab, he asked the following question: if two white Americans go to China and have a baby there, will it come out Asian? I was so shocked that I actually spit out my drink. Story 36. It was honestly like a movie. When I was in college you were limited to only a few guest passes, so it was pretty common to ask people on your floor to sign in friends. So late at night while we were playing Mario Kart someone knocked on our door to ask us to sign in their friends. We didn't really feel like going downstairs and dealing with that, so we hesitated. That's when he said, if I beat you in Mario Kart will you sign them in? We of course agreed. Little did he know we played every day all semester long. He was really convinced he would be us. We placed first, second and third and he ended up in 12th. We still signed in his friends though. Story 37. Not an expert, but I knew just enough to make somebody else look stupid if that counts. Had a guy at a bar try to claim that there were literally no female professional artists prior to the 20th century. I had just finished a year-long art thesis paper that discussed how female artists were written out of history by male counterparts or art historians going all the way back to the Italian Renaissance. It was like one of those moments you think about in the shower later on in the day, but it actually got to happen for me in real life and it was fantastic. Edit. So the full story on this was actually pretty fun. I'm looking for the paper as well for those that want to read it. It was from about 4 years ago, so hey race, hoping it's still somewhere in my old Dropbox. My friends and I went to some speakeasy type bar that had lounge seating, and you were kind of close to other groups of people as well based on the layout. Our group and a guy and girl near to us, and we ended up kind of merging sections to chat. The guy in question was there on a first date with a girl, who happened to be a couple years behind me in school at the same university. He was just super douchey in general, and then somehow got into talking about his art. He kept going on and on about how he was a renowned local sculptor, blah blah blah. So I asked him first if he knew of a few other sculptors artists in the area who happened to be professors colleagues of mine, and of course he starts going on about, oh they're pretty good, but like, I'm better. And I'm like, oh weird, cause female professor of mine who is an international artist is pretty good. That's when this chud launches into his spiel about how female artists should just be appreciative about the opportunity to make art today, because I know there weren't any female artists before the 20th century. So I asked, you haven't heard of Edmonia Lewis, or Camille Claudel, or Enid Yandel? That's a shame. Chud goes, oh well I mean they're good but they had to work under men to get noticed so they don't really count. Not true. Besides, I mean there's a reason there's no notable women from the Renaissance. He's obviously scrambling at this point for anything to prove his point, or for me to say I don't know to, so he's right where I want him. You've never heard of Sophonisba Anguissa, Lavinia Fontana, Artemisia Gentileschi? Oof buddy, what a shame. Seems like you should brush up on your field a little more. At this point, my then boyfriend now husband says one of the best things I've ever heard him say, which was, dude, you're not gonna win against her, this is her man. I definitely wouldn't have been able to name drop as well had I not just written that paper, but I wasn't going to let him know that. Best part is that his date and I ended up exchanging contact info, and she texted me the next day to let me know that she wasn't going to go on any more dates with him. Said that he had basically outed himself as a after that, and told her that her plan of going to med school was intimidating to him. Wonder why. Story 38. By no means an expert at all, but I have a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu training for about 5 years. One of my mates was always trying to catch me unawares, and he would randomly try to tackle me, or grab me to see what I'd do. A bunch of us went bouldering, and on the crash mats he double legs me out of nowhere, and then was super upset when I put him straight in a triangle choke. He never tried again after that, but like, you suddenly tackle me I'm going to respond pretty automatically. All this went down before I even realized what had happened and who was trying to wrestle me. I felt bad afterwards, but it's kind of what you get for randomly tackling girls out of nowhere. Story 39. Well, I'm a veterinarian and I know how to prevent fleas. My dog is itching and it's not fleas me okay, but your dog has infested them. It's not fleas, run comb and show them hundreds. The doctor and Happy Gilmore. I empathize. Edit. Well, this got busy. Flea prevention starts with giving flea preventatives. Off-brand stuff does not work. You bite the bullet and get name-brand stuff. Personally I like Bravecto for cats. Topical lasts pretty much 2 months. For dogs I know from experience that oral meds work better than topicals. I like NexGard, Simparica Trio or Seresto collars. With NexGard and the Seresto you need to add heartworm prevention because those don't have it. Story 40. Guitar Hero. Work held a Christmas party at a venue and set up the game for fun and prizes. I was the second oldest 47F person there. All the younger employees were going ham and having a great time. I wasn't going to play until the prize was 500 for last person standing. I walked away 500 richer and also a legend. Story 41. No expert or master electrician, but had a guy demanding I put can lights in his house without cans. These were not the canless kind either. He just straight up didn't want to pay for cans. Even bought the lights by the pallet on some massive sale. Real cheap, who wouldn't listen to anything I said about safety, legality, etc. I walked out and told him good luck with his inspection. Story 42. A friend of mine challenged me when I said the dusty bits on the floor below their air conditioner was because they needed to clean the filter. They insisted that it was ash coming from outside through the air conditioner because of fires that had been going on nearby. It was a split-system AC. I work in HVAC. At least once I explained how their unit worked, they conceded. Story 43. He wasn't really challenging me, but I brought up to my ex that I really wanted to paint something on the back of the denim jacket my dad gave me. My idea was to paint that really gross zombie from Return of the Living Dead because I adore him. Ex told me to find a stencil for it, and he could do that. I remember telling that I could most definitely do it on my own. After all, I've been drawing and painting since I could hold a pencil. I wouldn't say I'm the most amazing artist, but I'm pretty decent at what I do. He, in a very patronizing tone, told me I should paint it on like a scrap piece of canvas first to make sure I can get it right. I explained to them that I already was planning on that. Obviously, I wasn't just going to smear paint on my only denim jacket. So, I sat down and painted it on a small canvas, and it turned out even better than I could have imagined. Pretty sure Spite made me work even harder at getting down the details. I showed him, and I remember seeing the look on his face. He was trying to find something wrong with it, but he couldn't the next day. He asked if I would paint something on his leather jacket for him. Also, when we broke up, he kept my painting. Story 44. We lived in a non-English speaking country. I was in a restaurant with my now ex. It was a really hot day, and I sort of jokingly said I wanted warm water for a drink. I said it in English to him. He snapped at me in our first language saying I was gross for wanting to drink worm water. I had to explain to him in our first language what I just said, and he asked me very angrily why I was pronouncing it all wrong. Warm water. He told me it was pronounced, not worm water. It's spelled with an A, so it should be pronounced as so. It was a stupid thing to argue, but I knew him well enough to know that it was a hill that he was willing to die on, so I proceeded to tell him that English is my favorite subject in school. I consistently scored excellently at the subject, and will be graduating bachelor's degree as an English major. This was years ago. If anyone at the table should know how to pronounce a simple word as warm, it should be me. I pronounced each warm and worm, and told him how each word did not sound the same as it was spelled. Hearing what worm phonetically sounded like weirded him out. He was stubborn and insisted that he was right, and I had to remind him again of my qualifications. Story 45. Pool water treatment isn't very difficult even for the average Joe. Trust me, you do not need to pay someone $100 a month to treat and clean your pool. I love to listen to the salespeople at Leslie's local chain of pool supply stores educate me and their other customers. I got into a polite discussion about algae one time and I was told that I was wrong. I explained that I knew what I was talking about. He asked what I did and I responded industrial water treatment. He's very nice to me when I go into the store now. Story 46. Star Wars Battlefront 2, the original version. I knew that game inside and out. It reached the stage where I would be given every penalty possible whenever playing against someone else in order to make the match fair. Even then it was like 7,030 odds I'd come out on top. Eventually, I just realized I stopped dying and would make it the whole match without respawning once. I learned just about every single little trick to give myself an edge, all the things you can interact with, the best places to hide and set traps, the best and quickest routes to each place, the less frequently went to places, where all the health and ammunition droids were, how to quickly data those things on the enemy side, how to repair them quickly on my side. The most efficient way to kill the enemy troops and progress from command post to command post. This was like the only game I played as a kid and it showed. So to say the very least I was very happy when my cousin was acting all arrogant again at his skills and challenged me to a few games to prove him trash. Story 47. Trivia. I know all sorts of weird random facts. One day a coworker said, "If you're so smart, why don't you come down to the Legion's trivia night?" I am no longer welcome at the Legion's trivia night because of how badly I beat everyone. Story 48. I do every day for 20 years, as someone with a history degree. Basically everyone thinks they know it better than you. It's endless. History repeats itself. And those who study it are doomed to helplessly watch it repeat itself. Story 49. Basic algebra. My dad had me solving equations in my head from when I was 6, so by high school I had a format in my head. Unfortunately by high school they favored method over answers, so after one test where I lost a lot of marks for formulae I called the teacher out. He stated getting the right answer doesn't mean you did it right. So I demanded he challenge me on the spot. He took 3 questions from the text and read them out. I answered all 3 properly. He denied it was proof I knew what I was doing, but the other kids called foul and I never had an issue again grade-wise. Story 50. MLM Hun tried to sell me on shakes that are susu healthy and worth a high price. I've been studying nutrition for near on 10 years now and you knew that. Call me when you understand the difference between synthetic vitamin A and the real thing. And I still won't buy your garbage products. So it's the Saturday after Thanksgiving a few years ago and I'm out with one of my old college friends and her extended family. We had just graduated the year before. We post up at a bar outside for the game. Everyone's pleasantly mid-afternoon buzzed. Her uncle, whom I hadn't met previously, asked what I do. I hated answering this question in 2017, especially with middle-aged adults, because they would invariably try to start something. At the time, I worked at an immigration law firm. Predictably, as soon as I tell him this, he asks what I think about the wall, etc. I give him my usual answer: bipartisan immigration reform, Gang of 8, etc. He tells me not to give him the rehearsed. He wants to hear what I really think. I say, oh, I don't really want to get into it. Let's enjoy the game. But he keeps pushing and I've had a couple beers, so against my better judgment, I engage. This maybe 50-year-old man becomes furious as the discussion carries on because I keep citing court cases and how our immigration system actually works. The kicker is at one point he says, just because you have all these statistics and citations doesn't mean you know any better than me. I just gave up and got another beer after that. Story 51. My husband, a psychologist from Mexico, insisted that I, a counselor from the US, would have to report a patient who I knew was going to commit a crime. I wouldn't. At least not necessarily. One of the rules is that I can break confidentiality only if a patient poses a serious and imminent risk to an identifiable other. Story 52. My dad tried to challenge me with a question about heat and worded it in a way that the laws of thermodynamics didn't quite apply. When my answer contradicted that, he thought I messed up, but really I was 5 steps ahead. Story 53. A guy from work challenged me to a tennis match. He must have been a hotshot back in his day, and TBF, as far as mid-40s go, he wasn't bad. I however was national team. Hooped is 6-0, 6-0. I would have eased up, but when I warned him pretty good, he laughed it off. Story 54. In college, Mario Super Strikers for the GameCube. I loved my GameCube so much as a kid, and actually ended up bringing it to college with me. I had so many people that wanted to play or would smack talk about how good they were, only for me to beat them over and over. I have a friend that I beat 30 times in a row over the course of an afternoon, and he swore he'd never play with me again. 5 years later and he still hasn't.